notepad, as you gather your notes or put your Bible in front of you, I want to remind us of some facts about this. The endings that we continue to see after 16:8 were not in the earliest manuscripts. They're in later manuscripts, and one of them's in some later manuscripts. The other is in other later manuscripts, and there are some manuscripts that actually even have both. So the reason that we think it ended at 16:8, rather than with one of these two endings, the shorter ending or the longer ending of Mark, is the early manuscripts just don't have it. So I want you to think to yourself, having heard 16:8, having heard 16:1 through 8, after such a compelling story, immediately this, immediately that, immediately this, and getting to 16:8 and immediately it stops. We've been expecting that there would be something after each immediately. And so something in us leans forward like a ski jumper, right? We lean out over our skis to try to figure out what happened next. And of course, copyists who got a hold of the Gospel of Mark as it was handed on from that first community to other communities, copyists eventually who had seen the other Gospels and knew of the other resurrection stories, just couldn't help themselves trying to help Mark out, right? I don't know. Did they think that Mark had something originally there and then it got cut off in the transmission? Or did they think the Spirit is calling on me to finish Mark's story because maybe he ran out of time? We don't know what the motive of the copyists were who added these, but we probably know, the highest probability is that the ending they supply is one that their community of Christians used. You can imagine, analogous, you can imagine yourself going into a Christian church to a worship service that's not your own, not your usual, and starting with the words, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name," and always moving in fear and trepidation because you don't know if it's sinners, debts, or trespassers, right? And so we ease up to that and we try to kind of come in fast when we find out what that church does. The early church had different ways of saying prayers. It had different stories, different traditions that they had held on to, and undoubtedly different primary resurrection stories that they had caught as a community for whatever reason in the trajectory of how tradition got passed on. So it's likely the shorter ending comes from a community that had that as their account of sort of the completion of the resurrection. I'm going to read that now. "And all that had been commanded them, they told briefly to those around Peter. And afterward, Jesus himself sent out through them from east to west the sacred and imperishable proclamation of eternal salvation." Right? Now, it's very likely, or at least probable, that this comes from language that they shared in their community about Easter. That it may not be the same words, but the same tradition. That Peter ended up primarily, because remember in 16 above, in Mark's shorter version, the 16:1 through 8, we saw tell the disciples, and especially Peter, tell the disciples and Peter. So it makes sense that they would raise Peter into the middle of this and then have Jesus give what amounts to a brief commission, right? We have a commission in Matthew, and we have a commission in Acts with Jesus, the risen Jesus, telling the disciples to go and make disciples, telling the disciples to spread the news throughout the world, right? So this one is a very, I might add, very efficient capstone to Mark 16:8. It doesn't take a lot of words to say, you guys, just to reassure you, they did get to meeting up and Jesus told them to go, right? Told them go and spread the word. That is a very efficient version. The other, the longer ending of Mark, is much more fascinating, much more spicy. Let's listen to that one. Now, After Jesus rose on the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene, from whom he had cast out 7 demons. He went out and told those who had been with him while they were mourning and weeping,